Today I'm going to go over the Mitsubishi M Series 3-ton tri-zone ductless heat pump system I got from eComfort. This is a system that I believe was put together by a company called Diversitech. So I'm going to review the system, how I have it set up, and go over a few details. I got this after the really hot summer here in California, and I have kind of an older home and inefficient home with really no energy efficient items like windows or insulation even. So this was the closest way that I could get to having something like a forced air system with that was a little bit more affordable and something I can potentially do myself, which I did. And the system actually is pretty nice and I'm happy with it, so I'll go over the details of all of the components that I ordered. And I'm scrolling through here so you can see. And some of the details on the system itself and my experience with it. But overall, I'd recommend the system. I think that it's a good starter system for a home like this and for heating and cooling. Looking forward to having a more comfortable summer next season. This unit is a 36,000 BTU condenser with a 3 different head units. You can see here on the left that I have an 18K, 9K, and a 6K. 2 bedrooms for the 6 and the 9, and then the 18 was to cover the living room and the dining room. And I think that's more than enough for a 1,000 square foot home. And this seems to do a pretty good job of keeping it, at least during the winter, pretty warm. So next I will go over the install and do a quick review so that you can see firsthand what I'm looking at, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then I'll move on to a install overview and just me using the unit so you can see what it's like to actually have it. Okay, let's review the complete system. I'll give the unit 3.5 stars because I believe it's doing everything it's supposed to do, everything that it's built to do, but there are some things that I think can be improved and potentially are improved on the newer units. But my experience is, I'll go over the pros first. The system looks reasonable and seems well built. That includes the condenser. It looks okay on the wall for what it is, a big plastic unit sticking out of the wall. But after a while it kind of fits in, you don't even really notice it. And I think it does look much better than any window air conditioners you would have, or especially the portable ones with the hoses sticking all over the place. So the alternative, besides for something that's using ducts or inset into the roof, I think these look pretty good. And they could be thinner, but like I said, I think it's reasonable. I like the fact that they have air filters, so since the system, when it's on, does move air the whole entire time, you're getting some level of mechanical filtering there. They have an enzyme filter on this unit as well, and I don't know how much difference that makes, but I do know the air has been very fresh, and it seems clean. So air filters are a plus as long as you remember to clean those out. I like the fact that if you're not in a room, you don't have anything running. If you have a ducted system or a forced air system, a traditional forced air system, you have all of your vents on usually at the same time, unless you have a more advanced system. So this allows you to hopefully save some money in rooms that you don't need to heat or cool at the time, which is the case for me. So my bedroom runs at night, but during the day it's completely off. So that's nice. The next thing is the system's very quiet. That's including the condenser. So if you're outside and you have noise requirements, if it's near a wall or near a neighbor or something along those lines, you should be fine. It's almost unnoticeable when it's on, unless it's really cranking, and even then you have to. It's not an annoying sound; it's just air blowing. So you get maybe 1 or 2 clicks when the condenser turns on, but that's nothing. The compressor turns on, but it's nothing noticeable. So very quiet. The units are quiet. They have a little bit of operating noise with the vanes moving up and down, but nothing that's out of the expected. levels of sound. So unit's very quiet, and the remote controls are very sensitive. It's a small one, but it is helpful. So those are the pros. Let's go ahead and move on to the cons now. So I show in one of the other videos in this review that there's a flowing sound in the units. If you have a multi-unit, there's a flowing sound in some units when they're off, if another unit is running. And this is the case that I am dealing with in my bedroom. So if I have, for instance, the living room unit on, then the bedroom unit will have some kind of rustling or flowing or swishing noise in the head unit, even when it's off. So this is kind of interesting. It says this is normal in the manual, but this is something to pay attention to if you have, if you're in a studio or something in your house and you need really, really quiet, you may not. Now the interesting thing is the unit in my office doesn't have this problem. So again, it may be just specific to certain installs where this is a problem, or maybe it is across the board in a multi-unit system, something to keep your mind on. There is this idea that I was using, or that I will be using in the review, called downtime and dead time. I'm calling dead time when the unit is on but doesn't do anything, because it doesn't have priority. It's not receiving the coolant that it needs. So it's basically just sitting there on but not blowing any air and waiting until, I guess, the condenser can create more coolant for it to use, or something else to happen before it can turn back on. I'm calling that dead time. The other thing is downtime, and downtime is when the unit is on. It's usually when the unit reaches the temperature it's supposed to, and then the system will go into just air circulation mode. So there's small operation noises in this case during downtime, which is, for instance, when you're heating, the fan shuts off, the vanes point from straight down to all the way horizontal, and then there's a slight burst of air, and then it becomes quiet again. And none of these things are very loud, but this is something that I do notice, especially in the one in the bedroom that's above my bed. So I don't think that's definitely not a deal breaker, because the sounds aren't that loud. You get used to it. It's just interesting the way that makes noise and the way that works. And if it's on all night, it'll do this every few minutes after it gets to the point where it's happy with the temperature. It goes into downtime, starts circulating the air, and will make this noise. Then when it's ready to heat the room up again, you go back to, the vanes go back down, the fan speed changes, and so you get this cycling of this kind of noise. So it's not completely silent. It's not just air flowing. You do have a little bit of a motor noise and a little bit of these things, the changing of the speed of the fan. So just something to note there. But those are the main cons. The other ones are more inherent to like the ductless mini split systems as a whole, I'm assuming, but I'll go over those as well. I like to have some kind of smartphone control. There is a separate unit, I believe, that will allow you to have a thermostat, and I'm not sure how, if you can connect multiple units to that and use your smartphone. I don't think you can, but anyway, you end up with 3 remotes, which I guess is a good thing because you have independent control. But like if you're in one room and, for instance, want to turn your bedroom on so it's heating up while you're waiting, that's not possible with like a smartphone. So maybe that's the wave of the future. The circulation, the downtime circulation, it'd be nice if you could turn that off in some cases. I understand that you have to circulate the air in the room so you can keep a consistent temperature and kill those dead zones that are inherent to these kind of systems, or any forced air systems. But sometimes you just want it to be quiet when it's not running, and that's not possible. It'd be cool if it was an option. Again, not a deal breaker. The unit will snap and pop when it's heating up, and I'm assuming when it's cooling down as well. So there are those kind of heating and cooling noises, those adjustment noises inside the system while, I guess, the coils are shrinking or growing. So something to keep in mind, the system will not be completely silent like I mentioned before. And the other thing that would be cool is if there was a way to deal with the dry air when you're heating your rooms or your bedrooms, and you have the air blowing, the hot air blowing, it's drying out the air, and it does make a difference. So I know there's nothing you can really do about this with these systems. I don't know if any other systems out there have something that will deal with this, but it would be cool if there was some way to humidify the air as it left the warm air as it leaves the system. I will say, so that's it for my pros and cons. Like I said, I'm giving a rating of 3.5 stars because the system is great. I'm just nitpicking on this stuff. I will say also that I'm happy with eComfort. They gave me a lot of assistance and helped me figure out all the parts I needed and made sure that I didn't end up with something that wasn't a match for this system, which is definitely possible. So the other thing I might mention now in the review section is what I would have done differently in install, and I know this is maybe this might be a little bit ahead of when I'm actually going to show this stuff, but this might be a good time to discuss it anyway. So one thing is the installation location of some of these. Like I mentioned, if you're heating, you need an open space right below the unit. So if your bed or something is right there, you will potentially have the thing blowing right on your head or on your body while you're sleeping, which could be good. But in the case of these units, the column of air that comes out, it's interesting because there's a warm column of air that comes out, but surrounding that is like the cold air that's getting blown out of the way. So if, for instance, you don't want the warm air blowing right on your face, you adjust the vane to angle a little bit away from you. So let's say it blows on your feet, but then around the area where the air is coming out, it's still moving air. So the cold, you actually get a draft. I guess that's the better way to describe it, is you get a draft around that column of air, of that cold air. So you actually have to aim it further away so that you can avoid the draft as well. So the placement is actually important. If you're just heating, or sorry, just cooling, then this probably doesn't matter as much. But if you're also heating, then consider this when you're installing, when you're choosing a location. Another thing I would have done differently is probably wrap the line sets with something as I push them through the holes in the floor and the walls, because I ended up ripping a lot of the insulation because trying to push things through and push the copper pipe through, it definitely pushed the insulation against some areas that were a little bit abrasive, and I ended up having to do a lot of taping after the fact, and it looked a little sloppy. So something to consider if you're going to be going under the house and pushing through walls or floors like me. The line sets, the Camco line sets I got with the system, all of the flares were good except for one, and it was noticeably messed up, but I figured I'll tighten it up enough and it will be fine. But of course there was a leak there, so I had to have the installer sweat the connection, completely remove the flare. So if I was doing it on my own, I would probably say get your own flaring tool. But this is another thing that's up in there. Just keep it in mind that if you get the Camco sets, line sets, the flares might not be perfect. And the last thing I'll mention I might have done differently or considered during the install is getting a torque wrench, because even though this is an easy fix, every single one of my flare nut connections was not torque tight enough. So because I didn't have a torque wrench, I didn't know where the proper torque should be. So I had to tighten those more when we discovered leaks on each one. And they were easily fixable, but this is something to make note of. It's if you're a beginner or don't really have experience with this, it's hard to know whether you're tightening or over tightening or under tightening. So I think that's it. So we'll move on to the actual videos of me using the unit. Okay, this is going to be a quick overview of the 9000 BTU unit. This is the MSZ GE09NA. So I'm going to just show how it works. This is what the unit looks like. In my install, I just ran a small caulk bead below to make it look like it's a little bit better on the wall. This is my bedroom, so the bed is right down here. And so I'm looking basically right up at it. And that poses some issues with the airflow direction and any noise that it makes, but overall I'm happy with it and fine with having it where it is. Let's go ahead and turn it on here. Well, quickly let's look at the remote. It's pretty straightforward, but let's just show, I haven't set the time on it because I don't need to. I don't use the scheduled on and off. So basically, in the general case, you're just turning it on and setting the temperature. So right now it's about 60, let's see, what is it? 65 in here, that's what it says. So let's set this to 66 and show generally how it works. So when the system is first turned on, you can see this set to 66. And let's put the fan in auto mode, which is that icon, and let's put the vane, which is the vent direction in auto mode as well. So if you put it in heat mode, which is this icon here, the vane setting, the auto vane setting, will put the vanes straight down, since you want to blow the heat down towards the ground. So this is what it looks like now while the system warms up. If you see the two green lights right there, that means that the system is not at the temperature you want it to be, so that it actually has some work to do. And while it's in this mode now, nothing's happening. There is a little bit of airflow that just stopped, but that's just because the system is not actually at temperature yet. So right now you can hear it popping a little bit. It's starting to heat up. So while it's doing that, that means that the condenser outside's running, pulling heat out of the air. And right now the outside temperature is about 36 or 37 degrees. This is California, so that's pretty cold for us. I figured this would be a good time to show the heat performance. So let's open this up real quick while it's heating up. These are the air filters inside. The blue filters here are the enzyme filters. These are the blue filters, just the main dust filters. These are supposed to be like something new they're adding, these enzyme filters. That's supposed to help remove allergens and scents. And the filter actually goes up to the top there, so when you want to clean it, which is supposed to be every 2 weeks, but I haven't cleaned it since I got it, and this stuff doesn't look too dusty yet, you just push this up and slide the whole thing out. And then behind that you'll see, here is all the coils. So it's a heat pump, so we're doing both cooling and heating with those. I think that's pretty straightforward though. So you notice that the unit is still heating up. It hasn't actually started yet, and right now it's not blowing any air. So potentially, if it's cold enough, it won't run at all. But I don't think that's the case now. So the one thing about the unit is that it will run in terms of blowing air around the room all the time. Let's close this up. Even when it's not heating, because I believe they're thinking that if the unit is running and the air is blowing around the room, then the air is being circulated, so the temperature is more even, so there's no hot spots. If there was no air when the system was off, then potentially you have one hot spot or a cool spot where the system would start running, but it wouldn't be needed since other parts of the room are not hot or cold. I think that's a pro and a con, because you do like having air circulation, you're circulating air through your filters, but at the same time it doesn't ever turn off, so you're always blowing air around the room. When it's cold, that's not always good. So you'll see that it just turned on now. And it's starting to blow out a little bit warmer air. So that's what it took for startup time. I think it was about maybe 3 minutes for that to start up. And they have a smart, I think they call it smart heat or smart start, where it doesn't start blowing on you until the temperature is more reasonable. So, and let's get into here what the sound is like. And since the temperature that I put is 66, even though the room is 65, it doesn't have a lot of work to do, so the fan, auto fan, doesn't really turn it on very high. So if we want to do that, we can go in here and hit the fan button here. That icon, as you can see, is like as quiet as possible, and that's what it's at right now. But if I turn it on much higher, that's full fan, and it really doesn't sound obnoxious. It sounds just like air flowing. There's no motor or some kind of electrical sound at all, which is nice. But usually you don't run it this high unless you're trying to heat the room up very quickly. And then we can show the vane. If you want to look at the vane, how it goes up like this, that's this angle here, and that corresponds with where your vane is pointing. Now, when you're cooling the room, this is best because it blows air across the ceiling, and then the cold air drops down and cools the room. But for heating, it ends up being down here. So you can see as I hit it, straightforward. And then this mode right here is for a oscillating vane. So this is going to go, the vent is going to go up and down, which is nice, I think, for most cases, because especially when you're heating, because it helps get those spots in the room that are harder to get, which is the case here, because you're blowing down the center of the room or in a specific direction, but it's not hitting. It's going to take much longer to heat up, so that's something you have to deal with. If we look here, let's see when this thing goes back up. This right here is the setting for the horizontal left to right. So you can push it out or in. There's two of these, so it's actually very adjustable, which I like. So let's turn the fan back down. I think the last thing I wanted to show here was the downtime. So the downtime is when the temperature is reached or it runs out of, I guess, warm coolant to continue the job. So it will go into a quiet mode where the vane goes all the way up and the thing just runs very quietly until, I guess, it recharges and gets the coolant back that it needs to the temperature it needs. Let's see if we can make that happen now. I'm going to put this up to 75. Put the vane on auto mode. Let's see what the air temperature feels like. The air temperature is much warmer now, and you can see the temperature is now 65, so we went up about a little bit up, not a full degree, but so I don't want to just sit here and wait on it, because sometimes it takes a little while if the system has a lot of warm coolant generated. Actually, I can show it by dropping the temperature down all the way to where we're at right now. I can hear it popping sometimes. So it's not a completely silent system. Let's go down to 65 here. I'll put the fan on auto mode. So you see the light now, there's only one light on, which means that the system has reached the threshold that it thinks is close enough to the temperature, which I think is like within 4 degrees above or below the temperature. So this is generally what it looks like after it's done its job. So what I'll do is, I guess this might take a while to show the downtime. So what I'll probably do is engage the other units and then have them start pulling coolant as well, and then it's more easy to show when the system is I guess you would say taking a break. So let's go ahead and do that. So right now we're in the other room. It's 66 degrees in here, so I figured this is a good situation to show how quickly this guy can heat the room up. This is the 18K unit, and much bigger, powerful, but this is basically the head unit that's going to be doing most of the house, probably 300, 400 square feet. So even then it might be a little bit overkill, but I figured the way my house is laid out, this is probably the best for these 2 or 3 rooms that it's going to be heating. So let's just go up to, I'm going down, let's go up to 75. And turn the fan up a little bit. This is the head unit, so it takes priority. That's my understanding. So if it needs some coolant, it'll be the first one to get it, while the other rooms have to just wait. So it's starting to blow out now, but with the two lights, as you can see, it hasn't reached temperature internally yet. So once it gets there, then it'll turn up and start blowing like we showed in the other room. Just to get a feel for how wide the unit is. It's not that bad. It's a big unit, but for what it is, I don't think it's a problem. You get used to it, and in my opinion, it looks much better than in a window unit or the old heaters that we have in the house already. Let's see how long this thing takes to get to a temperature where it's ready to start blowing. In the meantime, we'll go back in the bedroom and see what that unit is doing. Okay, we're back in the bedroom, and I just turned this unit off because I wanted to show one thing that's kind of interesting. You can hear somehow within this unit, you can hear the coolant flowing. And this unit is off, but for some reason, if another unit is on in the house, this one, you can somehow hear it's either coolant flowing through or some vibration or something. It's not a deal breaker, it's not that loud, it's just something to note if you're very sensitive to sound. Like, this is in my bedroom, so usually when I'm here, I'm by myself, so this is the only unit running, so it doesn't affect me. But if you have other units running in the house, you might have to just be prepared to deal with a slight, I don't know if you would call it a swishing sound or a flowing sound. In the manual, it says that this is normal, so I'm just getting used to it, but it's something to pay attention to if you get these multiple units. Let's turn it back on here. So the unit on the living room is set to, the main unit is set to 75 degrees, so let's turn this one up to an average temperature. I think that people like is around 72. So what I'd like to try to show now is when this unit loses priority and just kind of dies out temporarily while the other one is doing heating. It might take a few minutes, so I'll go ahead and shut this off for now and come back when it does. Here's a quick example of what I was mentioning before, where the system kind of goes into a dead zone where one of the units just doesn't get any juice from the condenser. You can actually hear the sound that I was talking about before. That's the sound of the coolant flowing through the unit, but the unit is not actually doing anything on this end. This happens when the unit is off, I believe, or just when the unit is, let's actually get a little louder. So that's the sound. It's not horrible. It's just something that you have to, bit of a flowing or squishing sound that you have to expect when you have another one of the air handlers on in the other room. Okay, so now it's starting to blow out a little air again. So I don't know what that is, if that's just the system is waiting for coolant, or it can't cool any heat anymore, or if it just means that the other unit is taking priority. But clearly there's flow going through the unit that's caused by the other unit, because that's when you turn the other unit off, you don't have that sound. So that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe this doesn't happen to every single setup. Maybe it's only specific setups that happen like this. But something that I noticed.